Hey gamers, it is the final Halloween episode, and today I'm doing something a little bit surprising. At the very least, it's the first time I've ever done it. Today I shall be using this wooden haunted house kit to construct the haunted house of my dreams. Can I turn basic wood into a cool freaking model? Let's find out. Step 1, let's punch out all these beautiful pieces. Grab a jar so we don't lose any of these tiny little pieces. And while we're at it, let's get this guy that I missed earlier too. A quick sidebar to look at this adorable little skeleton. Okay, done with that. Now, let's get all these pieces sorted out. And here is a quick, satisfying time-lapse of what it looks like to organize a bunch of nearly identical little wooden pieces. How delightful. Now that my pieces are sorted, pun intended, it's time to paint these. I debated for a little bit about whether to paint them just as is, or if it would be better to construct it first and then paint it. In the end, I decided to paint the pieces first, since I figured it'd be easier to use spray paint. This was maybe a little bit of a mistake, but it did definitely make the painting process easier, I'll say that much. So mixed success, basically. In terms of color palette, I'm sort of going for the basic haunted house flair, so sort of grayish brown wood, sort of bluish roofs, and overall a lot of dark, dank colors. I'm also really heavily leaning into staining the pieces more towards the bottom and towards the edges, so they look more 3D. What I'm doing here is I'm adding a little bit of shadow to the cracks in between each of the little individually carved wood planks. It helps the planks look a little bit less straight and adds a bit of shadow so they look more worn down, which is nice. It is the quickest way, in my humble opinion, to turn wedding getaway into cabin in the woods. So now that I've done this texture on one little piece, I'm basically going to replicate it on all the other pieces. And while I'm in there, I'm going to paint the window sills and exposed wood black so they look more 3D. I do this a lot. It takes a lot longer than you'd think. While I'm in here, might as well paint some fences as well, since I'm painting them all black. I'm aiming for, old metal, dark metal. Oh, whoops, broke my paintbrush. All right, that's fine. Let's get back to painting. It's now time to go on a little bit of a field trip, because, well, you can't spray paint indoors. Here's my beautiful cardboard spray painting house. Isn't she lovely? Standard spray painting rules apply. Give it a good old shake, and then make sure you always test your spray paint to be sure that the nozzle works and that the color is more or less what you want. Oh, that's weird. How'd that get there? I'm spray painting the outside of the ceiling blue and spray painting the inside of all of my pieces white. Why white? I'm planning on making the entire inner part of the haunted house yellow so that I can install some lights and it'll look like the whole thing's glowing. I think it'll look rad. Look at these cool after images, by the way. Sort of ghostly and cool, right? There's a little bit of an after image on my hands as well. Whoops. Once your pieces pass the spray paint test, it's time to bring them back inside. And while they're drying, or setting, or curing, or whatever you want to call it, I'm going to go ahead and make the base. I figured it'd be easier to do this before I put the house on it, which, once again, was maybe a little bit of a mistake. To start with, I am making a top-tier ground goop using expired acrylic paints, expired Mod Podge, and some little chunklins of moss from my little container here. I slather on the forbidden sauce until my entire wood plate is covered in a wonderful thick layer. Then I add some toppings in the form of little chunks of moss, some little stones, and other little textured things. Upon review, I realize the moss is a little bit too vibrant green for the dull paint that I've got, so I go ahead and paint it a little bit more of a dead color. Because as we all know, ghosts are pretty freaking bad at watering plants. I'm gonna go ahead and take this forbidden pizza elsewhere to cure. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and paint all of those pieces that I previously spray painted white a lovely shade of yellow, so once again we can get that nice reflection effect from inside the windows. You know what painting looks like. So I'm gonna speed through this part. You don't need to see me paint all of these pieces. I'm just gonna go ahead and 1, 2, 3, go. I thought it'd be cool to add some fall leaves to my base to, get those fall vibes. So I'm going to go ahead, print out a photo of some foliage, paint the backside red so that these leaves don't look mysteriously white on the other side, and then I'm going to cut out some tiny, tiny little leaf shapes into a jar, because it started to become impossible to find them. Don't cut out tiny little things unless you've got a thing to hold them. Here's a satisfying little leaf roll. My general process for attaching these was put down a little bit of paint and then use tweezers to just sort of place the leaves. I also used my hands, which was the wrong move, but I got impatient. What you gonna do? Now that I've assembled all my pieces, it's time to assemble the pieces into something resembling a house. I'd like to say this was easy, but the reality of it is I added too much paint prior, so the connections were actually very, very difficult to put together, but I managed. Let's just duplicate this real quick and attach these to the house. Man, it's crazy with those side things installed. It's starting to look like something. Wow. Little half step here, I kind of want to add some windows to the thing. I think it'll add another fun little layer. So to do that, I'm taking some shrinky dinks, adding a layer of glue to add some texture, hitting it a lot with a paper towel, adding some yellow paint, hitting it more with a paper towel, adding some white paint, hitting it more with a paper towel, because apparently I was really enjoying that part of the process. Basically, I just rinsed and repeated, adding paint and hitting it with a towel until I had a texture that kind of looked like dirty glass. You might think that this is very, very yellow, and you'd be right. But again, I'm going for yellow light, and there's nothing really inside the house anyway. What I've got going will work fine. Making broken windows is about as easy as you think it'd be. I'd find an area that looked nice with my chosen piece, cut it out, add some little jaggedy bits and cracks with scissors, and then glue it in. The trick I found was to have multiple bits of broken glass sort of coming in from all sides rather than just one. This made the window look a little bit more 3D and a little bit more naturally broken. Not to toot my own horn, but I think this looks pretty sweet. Knock knock. Who's there? It's the door. Door who? I'd say I adore you, but that would be a bad example, because making this door, I'm pretty sure it took like 5 years off my life. It had little connectors that were very hard to get in the door because they were too loose and kept falling out. And since the door connected on the same side, basically it kept falling off its hinges. It continued to fall off its hinges while I constructed the whole thing. To quote my past self, "Oh, I can just tell you are going to be a problem." And get this, I was right. It's just these things, they don't invest in chill, just chill. Everything's chill. Also, wow, how'd that door design get there? That's crazy. Perhaps a ghost did it. Whoa. Anyway, my door was a little bit hard to open, so I super glued some glass beads in place to act as doorknobs, just to make it a little bit easier. With that done, let's actually just go ahead and construct the last part of this house base, which is the back window. With that done, let's go ahead and try and put it on the base. I mean, we've got a final house and the base, and so everything should fit and be totally fine, right? Wrong. Do you remember earlier when I mentioned a big mistake that I made in painting the base before adding the house? Yes, this was it. I miscalculated where the edges would line up, and as a result, the entire house was completely blocked from going into the pegs that it needed to go into. So now we've got a step just to fix the base. But first, I'm going to fiddle with the lights because facing the consequences of my own actions is terrifying, and I prefer not to do it. The way that I got the string lights to work was I put them inside of a non-flammable fiber material so that the light would be spread out and look a little bit misty. The overall effect is super cool. Now I need to go and fix the base, and I did that by chiseling away all of my hard work. It was very sad and very tragic and hurt my wrists. It was just a bad time all around. But finally, I could get the house installed. I said finally, I could get the house installed. Ah, for Pete's sake, what are you doing with that? No, I said get the house installed. What are you doing? That's not a mallet. Well, stop using tools that aren't tools. Okay, whatever. I guess it's good enough, the house. It's staying together, and that's really all I need. I went ahead and added the fences and also the little skeleton inside the house. So now when you open the door, there's a little guy there to greet you. Isn't that cute? Look at him. My beloved. Anyway, let's build the rest of this thing. Now our house is done, but she's looking a little bit too clean and tidy, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to mix up some more of my patented goop using expired paints, non-expired paints, and expired Mod Podge to make sort of a bluish goop, which I shall add to the bases of the fences and to the edges of the roof. This will do two things. One, it'll make the wood look a little bit less uniform and a little bit more like worn down, sort of like muck and grime has accumulated there over the ages. And two, it'll hide the edges where you can still see the lighter inner side of each of the pieces. I went a little bit hog wild with this stuff, but again, I'm going for a haunted house, you know? A little bit of wear and tear is natural. I also mixed up a darker version that I could use on the house itself, along with on any exposed yellow edges. Once I'd done quality control and made sure no yellow was showing except in places where I wanted it to be, my house was basically done. Except psych, no it wasn't, I still had to add window frames, which I did by making a little puddle of glue, dipping them into the puddle of glue, and then placing them very, very, very carefully over top of their equivalent size windows. It's time to light this bad boy up. I'm taping the switch inside the roof for ease of access, and then just sort of shoving the polyfill with lights inside of it inside of the house until it's well distributed. And honestly, the lights add so much. I'm so glad I did the lights. It just adds a ton of atmosphere. It looks great. One last step I did was added some tiny little bits of moss here and there, and now it's just time for the beauty shots. Thanks for joining me on this video. Happy Halloween, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.